They mocked the new cheerleader until they learned who trained her to never break. When Aaliyah Brooks stepped into Westbrook High, every hallway conversation paused. She wore the school colors, blue and gold, but what truly stood out was her confidence. She had just moved from another state and earned a spot on the cheerleading squad in her first week. Not everyone clapped. Some girls whispered, some boys laughed, and a few eyes burned with jealousy. To them, Aaliyah wasn't just new, she was different. At first, the bullying was quiet, so quiet that teachers missed it and classmates pretended not to notice. The kind of cruelty that hid behind smiles and polite laughter, the kind that left no bruises but carved wounds far deeper. Aaliyah's locker was accidentally slammed shut just as she reached for it, the metal ringing loudly enough to draw stares, followed by soft giggles and whispered apologies that sounded rehearsed. Her name was left off practice lists more than once, forcing her to stand awkwardly on the sidelines while others stretched and laughed, pretending it was a simple mistake, promising it would be fixed next time, though next time never came. Her cheer uniform went missing twice, each time appearing hours later crumpled in a trash bin or soaked in water, leaving her scrambling to borrow replacements while the clock ticked and her chest tightened with panic. No one ever took responsibility, and no one ever seemed surprised. Then the comments started, small at first, slipped into conversation like harmless opinions, said just loud enough for her to hear but quiet enough to deny. "You don't fit the image," one girl said with a tilted smile, eyes scanning Aaliyah's face as if measuring her worth. "Cheer isn't for girls like you," another whispered while fixing her lipstick in the mirror, pretending not to notice Aaliyah standing behind her. "Who do you think you are?" came next, sharper than the rest, spoken without humor, without disguise. Each word landed heavier than the last, pressing down on her chest until breathing felt like work. Aaliyah learned quickly that reacting only made it worse, that tears were treated like entertainment and anger like proof that she didn't belong. So she swallowed her pain and smiled through it, perfected the art of looking unbothered, of laughing at jokes that sliced her open, of nodding politely when people questioned her right to stand where she stood. She told herself it didn't matter, that words were just words, even as they echoed in her head long after the gym lights went dark. At night, alone in her room, she replayed every moment, wondering what she had done wrong, wondering if standing tall had somehow invited punishment, wondering if shrinking herself might finally bring peace. But quitting was never an option, not because she wasn't afraid, but because fear wasn't stronger than the promise she carried inside her. Her father's voice lived in her memory, steady and calm, reminding her of the rule he had taught her long before the bullying began, the rule he repeated whenever life felt unfair and heavy. "Strength is staying calm when others want you to break." He had said it after long days, after disappointments, after moments when giving up felt easier than standing firm. And so Aaliyah held onto those words like armor, letting them wrap around her heart when cruelty tried to seep in. She learned to breathe through humiliation, to meet insults with silence, to let her posture speak when her voice shook. Every smile she wore became a shield, every calm response an act of quiet rebellion. The people who tried to erase her mistook her silence for weakness, never realizing that restraint takes more courage than retaliation, that endurance is a strength they had never learned. And though the cruelty continued, hidden beneath polite faces and fake encouragement, something inside Aaliyah hardened, not into bitterness, but into resolve. She would not disappear. She would not fold. She would stand exactly where she was, calm, unbroken, and waiting, because storms always reveal who was truly strong enough to survive them. It happened before the biggest game of the season, the kind of day everyone else buzzed about with excitement, banners hung high, music echoing through the halls, adrenaline thick in the air. But for Aaliyah, the atmosphere felt heavy, charged with something dark she couldn't quite name. The locker room was louder than usual, laughter bouncing off the walls, sharp and careless, the sound of confidence from girls who knew they were protected by numbers and popularity. She had barely set her bag down when the captain stepped forward, smiling as if this were all a joke meant for everyone to enjoy, and with one sudden shove, sent Aaliyah's bag sliding across the floor and straight into the trash. The room erupted in laughter, not surprised, not uncomfortable, just entertained. Before Aaliyah could react, before she could even process the humiliation burning up her neck, the door slammed shut with a loud click that echoed in her chest. Someone had locked it. Someone else lifted a phone, the small red recording light glowing like an accusation. Aaliyah felt the room closing in, the walls tighter, the air thinner, her pulse roaring in her ears as whispers turned into open mockery. "Maybe you should quit before you embarrass us," one girl sneered, folding her arms, eyes full of something cold and satisfied. Others nodded, adding comments, laughing louder, feeding off each other's cruelty, as if this moment had been planned, rehearsed, saved for the perfect time. Aaliyah's hands shook as she stood there, fingers curling and uncurling, her body screaming to react, to shout, to run, to disappear, but she didn't cry. She refused to give them that. She bent down slowly, deliberately, every movement controlled, and pulled her bag from the trash, ignoring the smears, ignoring the laughter, ignoring the phone still pointed at her face. She straightened her shoulders, unlocked the door herself when someone finally stepped aside, and walked out without looking back, her steps steady even as her chest burned. She didn't go to the game. She didn't go to practice. She went straight home, the silence of the house wrapping around her the moment she closed the door, finally allowing her to breathe. She sat on the edge of her bed for a long time, staring at nothing, replaying every second not with tears, but with a growing, unfamiliar heaviness, the realization that something had shifted, that what happened wasn't just bullying anymore, it was deliberate, calculated, and dangerous. That night, dinner went untouched, answers stayed short, and the house felt quieter than it ever had. Her father noticed. Silence was something Chief Marcus Brooks, retired Navy SEAL, never ignored. He had spent decades reading rooms where silence meant ambush, where quiet signaled danger, where what wasn't said mattered more than what was. He watched his daughter carefully, noting the way she avoided eye contact, the way her posture was too rigid, the way her calm felt forced instead of natural. He didn't press. He didn't raise his voice. He simply sat across from her, the weight of his presence steady and grounding, waiting. He knew broken spirits didn't need interrogation. They needed Marcus didn't yell, didn't slam his fist on the table, didn't storm out of the house in a fury the way people expected strong men to do, because his strength had never been loud. He had learned long ago that noise wastes energy and anger clouds judgment. Instead, he listened. He listened the way he had listened to distant gunfire in hostile territory, the way he had listened for footsteps outside a safe house, the way he had listened to silence when silence meant danger. He watched Aaliyah as she spoke, her voice measured but strained, her eyes fixed somewhere just past him as if reliving every moment she described. He didn't interrupt, didn't rush her, didn't soften the truth to make it easier for himself. Every word she shared settled into him with weight and clarity, forming a picture he didn't like but understood all too well. When she finished, the room stayed quiet, not uncomfortable, not empty, but deliberate. Marcus nodded once, slowly, the way a man does when a mission becomes clear. Then he stood up and made 3 calls. The first was to the school board, his tone calm and precise, his words chosen carefully, laying out facts without emotion, dates without exaggeration, actions without opinion. He knew institutions listened when they realized someone was documenting everything. The second call was to a civil rights attorney, someone he'd once helped through a veterans advocacy network, a woman who understood how power hid behind policies and how abuse often wore a polite face. Marcus didn't ask if there was a case. He asked how to protect his daughter and how to make sure the truth couldn't be buried. The third call was to the athletic director, and though his voice never rose, something in it shifted, a controlled intensity that came from decades of command, a reminder that he wasn't asking for favors, he was demanding accountability. When the calls ended, Marcus sat back down across from Aaliyah, folding his hands, steady as ever. He explained what would happen next, not with promises of revenge, but with a plan rooted in exposure and process. He told her bullies thrived in shadows, that cruelty survived when witnesses stayed silent and systems looked away. Marcus Brooks had survived combat zones, places where chaos ruled and mistakes cost lives, and he knew exactly how bullies operate. They test boundaries. They escalate when unchallenged. They retreat when the spotlight turns on. He had seen the same patterns in warlords, corrupt officials, and tyrants who relied on fear to maintain control. They don't fear strength, he told Aaliyah, his voice low but certain. They fear exposure. He reminded her that discipline wasn't about force, it was about consistency, that justice wasn't about shouting, it was about evidence. He spoke of patience, of timing, of letting people reveal themselves fully before stepping in. Aaliyah listened, feeling something unfamiliar settle in her chest, not anger, not sadness, but relief. For the first time, she didn't feel like she had to carry this alone. Her father wasn't there to fight her battles for her, but to stand beside her while the truth did the work. That night, as she lay awake, she realized the fear she'd been living. The stadium lights burned brighter than usual, turning the night into artificial day. Every seat in Carver High's home field was filled, students in face paint, parents wrapped in team blankets, little siblings waving foam fingers, alumni who still came back every home game like it was a religion. The scent of popcorn, hot chocolate, and fresh-cut grass hung heavy in the cold October air. The scoreboard glowed 21-17, home team ahead, fourth quarter still to come. Halftime had just begun. The marching band finished their medley with a sharp cymbal crash. Everyone expected the usual cheer squad routine, maybe a quick dance number from the drill team, then back to kickoff. Instead, the public address system crackled. "May I have your attention, please?" Principal Elena Vasquez's voice carried across the field, calm, measured, but carrying that unmistakable edge that made even seniors sit up straighter. She stepped to the center of the 50-yard line, holding a wireless microphone. Two assistant principals flanked her. Behind them, the giant video board flickered to life. A murmur rolled through the stands. No music, no announcement of sponsors, just silence and the low hum of 10,000 people suddenly paying attention. The screen showed grainy black and white security footage from the south parking lot, timestamped 3 weeks earlier, 7:42 p.m. A group of figures circled someone smaller, hooded sweatshirts, phone screens glowing, laughter that sounded tinny through the stadium speakers. Then the audio kicked in, real audio, pulled from someone's voice memo app that had been quietly submitted to the office 2 days ago. "You think you're special now, huh? Post that clip again, tag the whole school. Crybaby gonna cry." Laughter, a slap of phone against palm, a muffled sob cut off mid-breath. The footage jumped to still images, screenshots of group chats, usernames blurred except for 4, at Jackson K9, at Trey Bombs, at Kieran the King, at Maddox02. Words burned across the screen in stark white text on black. "She walks like she owns the field, now lol pathetic. Wait till everyone sees the video we got. Bet she quits cheering after this weekend. Keep sending it to her mom too, she needs to see." Gasps rippled through the bleachers. Phones that had been recording the band were now pointed at the video board. Parents exchanged looks. A few freshmen covered their mouths. Principal Vasquez waited until the last message faded. "Tonight," she said, voice steady, "we are not pretending this didn't happen. We are not sweeping it under the rug. We are not letting it slide because kids will be kids, or because it's just social media, or because the people involved wear our jersey." She turned slightly toward the home sideline. 4 figures stood frozen near the cheer squad's bench. Jackson Keller, Trey Washington, Kieran Doyle, Maddox Reed, all seniors, all starters or key reserves on the football team, all wearing the crimson and gold warm-ups they'd strutted in an hour earlier like kings. Now they looked small. Jackson Keller, Trey Washington, Kieran Doyle, and Maddox Reed, Principal Vasquez continued, each name landing like a hammer strike. "You are hereby suspended for the remainder of the semester, effective immediately. You are removed from all athletic teams and extracurricular activities for the rest of the school year. You will be required to complete a mandatory anti-bullying and restorative justice counseling program, both individually and in group sessions, before you will be considered for readmission to any school events or activities." A low roar rose from the student section, some cheering, some shouting in disbelief, others simply stunned silent. Coach Ramsey took 2 steps forward, face dark, mouth opening, but one of the assistant principals raised a hand and he stopped. The message was clear: this wasn't negotiable tonight. The principal wasn't finished. And because this behavior targeted a member of our cheer squad, a squad that represents the heart and pride of Carver High, we have one more announcement. The spotlight shifted. A single beam cut through the night and landed 30 yards away near the tunnel entrance. Aaliyah Thompson stepped into the light. She wore her full uniform, crimson shell top, gold skirt, white shoes with crimson laces, hair pulled into a high ponytail that swayed with each step. No jacket, no hoodie, no hiding, just her alone, walking across the turf toward the center of the field. No one moved to join her. The rest of the cheer squad stood clustered near the sideline, some looking down, some wiping their eyes, a few whispering furiously to each other. They had known for weeks, most of them, but knowing and acting were different things. Tonight the difference was on full display. Aaliyah didn't glance at them. She reached the 50-yard line, stopped beside Principal Vasquez, and turned to face the home stands. For a heartbeat, the stadium held its breath. Then Aaliyah lifted her arms, sharp, precise, the way she'd done 1,000 times in practice. "Ready," she called, voice clear and strong, carrying without a microphone. A scattered few answered on instinct, "Okay." She clapped once, loud, deliberate. The beat started in her head, the one they'd drilled all season, 8 counts, fast tempo, high energy. She began alone. Big Reds, let's go Reds." Her voice cracked slightly on the first line, not from fear, but from everything she'd swallowed for weeks finally rising up. She kept going. Big Reds, let's go." A few voices joined, tentative, then stronger. A cluster of freshmen near the front railing picked it up. Then the band caught the rhythm, snare drums tapping in, trumpets followed. Aaliyah turned, faced the visitors' side, and threw the next sequence with everything she had, high V, T-motion, herky jump that landed clean, her ponytail whipped. Her smile wasn't forced, it was fierce. The home side erupted. Not pity applause, not polite sympathy claps. Thunder. Thousands of voices chanting with her now. "Red S, Red S, Red S." She motioned toward the student section, palms up, urging them higher. They answered. Phones stayed raised, but now they were recording something different, not scandal, not humiliation, a girl who refused to disappear. On the sideline, Jackson and the others were being quietly escorted toward the tunnel by 2 security officers and an assistant coach. No one looked back at them. Aaliyah finished the routine with her signature final pose, one hand on hip, the other pointing straight at the sky. Sweat glistened on her forehead under the lights. Her chest rose and fell fast. The roar went on for almost a full minute. Principal Vasquez stepped forward again, microphone raised. "This is who we are," she said simply, "not the ones who tear others down, the ones who stand back up." She handed the mic to Aaliyah. Aaliyah looked out at the sea of faces, some crying, some shouting her name, some simply staring in open awe. She brought the microphone to her lips. "One more time," she asked. The stadium answered with one voice. "Ready." She grinned, real, bright, unbreakable. "Okay." And they ran the cheer again, louder than before. When the final note faded, Aaliyah lowered her arms, turned, and walked back toward the tunnel, head high, shoulders square, alone, but never again invisible. The game would resume in a few minutes. But something bigger had already been decided under those Friday night lights. Respect had been earned, and no one who witnessed it would ever forget who earned it. Aaliyah didn't just stay on the team, and in time people began to realize that staying had never been the hardest part, becoming undeniable was. The whispers faded first, then the side glances, then the quiet resistance that once followed her every move, replaced slowly by respect that was reluctant at first and undeniable by the end. By senior year, when her name was announced as team captain, the gym erupted in applause that felt different from anything she had heard before, not polite, not forced, but earned. She stood at the center of the floor, wearing the same uniform that had once been taken from her, her posture calm, her expression steady, knowing exactly what it had cost her to stand there. Leadership didn't change her, it revealed her. She set standards not with intimidation, but with consistency, demanding accountability while offering support, making it clear that talent meant nothing without character. She started an anti-bullying initiative that went beyond posters and assemblies, creating real systems for reporting abuse, safe spaces for conversations, and consequences that could no longer be brushed aside. She spoke openly about silence, about how cruelty survives when people look away, and her words carried weight because they came from experience, not theory. Younger girls began to find her after practice, in hallways, through emails written late at night, girls who felt invisible, girls who thought quitting was their only escape. Aaliyah listened to them the way her father had listened to her, without interruption, without judgment, reminding them that their presence was not a mistake and their voices were not an inconvenience. She mentored them patiently, teaching them confidence not as arrogance but as self-respect, showing them how to stand firm without becoming hard. And through it all, her father sat quietly in the stands at every game, never seeking attention, never offering commentary, just watching. Marcus Brooks didn't cheer the loudest, didn't wave signs, didn't need recognition, because pride for him was private and deep. He watched his daughter lead warm-ups, encourage teammates, step between conflict before it escalated, and he saw something stronger than medals or titles. He saw resilience shaped into purpose. He saw a young woman who had learned that strength wasn't about overpowering others, but about lifting those who were pushed down. Each time Aaliyah stood taller, each time she spoke with clarity and calm, it was proof that the cruelty meant to break her had instead forged something lasting. The biggest mistake the Bullies ever made was thinking her strength came from nowhere, thinking it appeared overnight, unearned and undeserved. They never saw the quiet nights, the discipline, the lessons rooted in integrity, the father who taught her that real power doesn't need permission to exist. By the time